Hello, welcome again to Break the Cycle today. So, if you've ever been stuck in a loop, if you've ever wondered if this is all there is to life, or if you're simply looking for that nudge to take the first steps towards change, this episode is for you. So, stay tuned. We dive deep into a conversation today with Ray and covering the tools, the mindsets, and strategies to help you break free and soar. Ray, my friend, good evening and welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Ray, this is, I think, the fourth episode, and you are family, Ray, and I'm supposed to not feel the pressure of interviewing you, but I do, and I think it's for a reason. You know me too well. There's nothing that I can misrepresent to you about me. You pretty much know everything. You're like family, Ray. You're like a brother to me. I've known you for over 19 years now, I think. And we've not only become very good friends, we've become brothers. And for me, that's pretty special. So this episode, Ray, is especially important to me that you could make it. So thank you again.
No, I'm honored. I'm honored, Fry. Thank you for having me.
Raymond Kumalo. Kumalo is a very big name, isn't it, Raymond?
Well, massive
If
name.
if you carry a Kumalo surname, my understanding is it comes with a lot of expectation of who you are in society, leadership, and all. What does your surname mean to you, Raymond?
You know what? I think I just carry a very big name. Unfortunately, I don't carry the heritage because I didn't then get to build a relationship with my father from whom I get the name. So what a Kumalo is not intrinsic to me. It's not who I'm actually defining who a Kumalo is for my children, trying to redefine who we are. So, but I mean, in terms of society, yes, I carry a name where when I talk to people, I get responses. People begin to speak to me in Ndebele. I can barely speak the language, but I've sort of learned how to survive. Yeah, but it's a great honor to have a name like this. It's a great honor. It's a great honor.
Raymond, what comes to my mind whenever we talk, Raymond, is just your ability to articulate. You've got a way with words. You're very eloquent. You know how to express yourself. You can hold the stage. I've been to many ceremonies where you have hosted. I've seen you preach. Where do you get that from, Raymond? And how can one go about learning how to communicate in the way that you do, which is quite impressive, I must say.
Thank you for the compliment. Now the pressure is on because suddenly everyone listening is now thinking they want to hear that eloquence come through. Oh man, the pressure. But you know what? I think for me, yes, there is just a part of me that's naturally. I think talking is just a natural part of what I do. But in terms of speaking to public, and not actually, I became an adult because when I was in school, I just got maybe one or two opportunities. I did a bit of acting, but it was never something that I considered something that I was good at. It took, I think, one time where we were supposed to go for a speech competition as part of our youth group at church, and the person that was supposed to do it didn't turn up. So I was just asked to step in, and it was an own choice speech. So I thought, you know what's a loss? So I went up there, I told a joke, but it was a nice joke. I told it in Shona, and surprisingly, I won. And from there on, I just had it in me that, you know what, I enjoy standing before people, and which is why even my day-to-day job is a trainer. So I actually get to speak as part of what I do. Yeah.
Ray, someone who is watching this for the first time and seeing you for the first time, they may want to understand who Ray Kumalo is. What do we need to know about you, Ray, relating to your early years on this earth and your time in school and young adult life that we need to know to understand who Ray Kumalo is today?
Okay. Well, interesting. I think my story comes in two parts. There's a part of me, I think, when I was in school. Most people I went to school with today maybe might not actually connect with the character that they see today, because I tended to hang in the shadows. I was loud, but I never was the center of any attention. Anyone that went to, even when I've done school reunions, people are like, "Whoa, Kumal, what happened?" Because there's a part of me that changed. I was born in Kwekwe in Kadoma. Kwekwe, grew up in Kadoma. This is my early days, and so through high school, I went to Mazoe High School for my O levels and Churchill for A levels. But in all that, the person that I was different. I became a Christian at age 18, just after my A levels. And I think that was a big turning point in my personal life. It also allowed me maybe to deal with some things that were very personal, because I'm a child of teen parents. So my upbringing was, I was raised by different relations, because my parents at the time weren't able to look after me, and they consequently didn't get married. And so I grew up in different homes, which led me to struggle maybe for my personal identity, because you have belonging issues when you grow up in that environment. I grew up a loved child. I cannot doubt the love of everyone that raised me, all my aunts and uncles. But there was always a part of me that never felt like I belonged, because I always had my own last name. I was the only Kumalo wherever I went. So every family, in as much as they love me, there was a point where they had to do their own family things, and I could not fit in, and that could not be helped. So I always felt an outsider. I think what then happens is when I then turn 18, I become a Christian. I got a new family. I was now able to sort of express myself to men of God I could trust. There were people that saw me and realized there's a lot more to me, but there was a big barrier that I had around myself to protect myself from getting hurt. And through counseling, through prayer, I got to appreciate the bitterness that I grew up with towards my parents. So it took a lot of me being able to deal with that bitterness, in order to just overcome some of the barriers that had been brought about because of my upbringing. Uh, I I never felt like I belonged, but suddenly when I got to church, I found myself in a very warm place. In terms of traditional values, I think it's pretty been very difficult, considering we're in a foreign land. But we do try by all means teaching them things like respect for adults, just understanding relationships, how we value relationships as a people. We are fortunate enough to have the grandparents very close to us, aunts and uncles, and obviously uncles like yourself, Arayo, who also help us to reinforce some of the teachings that the boys have to learn. And by God's grace, I also have to admit they are a credit to us as a family.
There, Ray. Ray, I've seen adults when they're being counseled or they're being helped to just go back and take stock of what could be the issues in their lives that they are struggling with. Why do the counselors like going back into the history of childhood? Why is it so important for an adult to go back in time to try and unravel or to try and understand why issues that they're dealing with still persist?
I think a lot of the traumas that we have as children, they tend to inform and shape who we become in our lives.
Mm.
And at times it's, we could be dealing with issues, that childhood issues, but these are issues that you've carried. These are issues maybe you've built your character around. And to try and deal with the issues today without going back into your past, it could be very superficial. Okay, I mean, you can imagine rejection. Someone that suffered rejection as a child, they've then built their character to protect themselves from further rejection, and to try and help them undo that without going back to the roots, you will not be able to, they will not be able to understand. So that's why it's, you find most of the time when you're doing a lot of counseling, you want to sort of go back into someone's history to help them connect with where the everything starts from. So like I said in my example, I was struggling, and it took someone talking to me and understanding how I grew up, for them to understand how I felt rejected, how I felt an outsider. And yet I grew up in very loving families, for I grew up with people that accepted me. I never felt judged. I never felt an outcast. But because of the rejection issues that were deep within me, the questions of why did I not grow up like any other child? Why couldn't I grow up with my mom and dad like every other child? You have those questions and you can't shake them off up until someone actually begins to help you to accept that and be able to move on and build from there.
What does the rejection feel like, Ray? Are you able to put that in words?
I guess rejection, I'll just try and put, I mean, there you are saying I'm a wordsmith. Um, Rejection, for me, it starts from you realizing or feeling you ought to be somewhere, you ought to belong somewhere. As a, from my experience as a child, I felt I belonged to the Kumalo people. I deserved a Mr. and Miss Kumalo to be my parents. And the fact that they were not there and they were not able to participate like other parents in my life, I always felt rejected. But then there's the rejection that is overt. I think maybe mine would be covered. But then there's overt where you actually told in no uncertain terms that we do not want you to be party. And I think that's the next level.
Mm.
That's next level. Yeah.
Mm. Mm. So, for someone who is dealing with issues of rejection, let's start with someone a grown up, an adult who's dealing with issues of rejection right now, of rejection that happened 40, 45 years ago. What's the starting point? Where do they start? If they think that the issues can be traced back to childhood.
Well, I think the effect of rejection will come in bitterness. You find you are bitter towards certain people, and up until you begin to forgive those people, you are going. I think that's where the struggle comes in. So I think, yes, facing the reality of, you know what, I was rejected at this point, I felt this way, and it still affects me till today. Okay, some of these things you think you've dealt with them because you all you've done is ignore rather than deal with. So I think it's going back into understanding that, look, I carry bitterness towards certain people, towards certain situation, and I want to start just by forgiving. Okay, just by releasing, because remember, bitterness affects you, not the person that you're bitter towards. So I think just accepting to say, you know what, I'm bitter towards these people because I feel they did not do right by me. That then goes back into, again, also maybe not even expecting an apology, because I think one of the things that we want, that would be ideal, is a person that rejected you coming to seek your apology. and your forgiveness. I think that might be ideal. But in reality, especially coming from our African backgrounds, our parents they do not ask for forgiveness from their children. So for me, it's something that I've had to come to terms with, but then realize I don't forgive for their sake. I forgive for my sake. And forgiving my parents for what I felt was them rejecting me was the start of my breakthrough.
How did you go about forgiving them? What were the steps? Did you speak to them? Did you phone them? Did you have an opportunity to just have a heart to heart and discuss the issues? How did that process go?
I think initially, the first things I had a good counselor. I remember a gentleman by the name Eugene. He sat me down. We talked at length. We talked at length. He allowed me to air how I really, really felt. And because it was a safe space, I poured out to tears at some points, because then, I allowed sort of emotions that I'd bottled up as a child to come through. Events that I remember very well that would have happened where I felt hard done by. There were moments when I achieved stuff at school and there was no one to celebrate me. Everyone else's parents were there, but no one was there for me. Those moments were moments that really hurt. But I bottled them because I couldn't talk to my parents about it. It didn't seem like something that they would even be concerned over.
Hmm.
But it's when I got those moments to talk about these things, to air my feeling, to open up my heart. I cried in parts, but just through that, I was able to process and come to terms to admit, to say, these issues, they still hurt me even though I'm a grown up. And with my father, unfortunately, our relationship was never right for me to have a discussion with him. Sadly, he's late now. I tried here and there, but even on when you try and socialize an issue with him just to sort of see if you can talk about it, the response was never good enough for me to think I can broach the subject. With my mom, when I initially talked about it, we had a falling out because obviously she defended her side of the story. She was young. Okay. She also had to make decisions as a teenager. And part of me also needed to come to terms that I was a child of a teenager. So she was also making decisions that maybe at the time, and there was a certain wisdom within the culture that also endorsed the decisions that she made. So we had a falling out initially, but with time, well, I cannot expressly say my mom came and said, "Look, I'm sorry," but I think we sort of found each other, and even through to her dying years, we were building our relationship back. It's unfortunate she then passed away before we could really get over some of the things that were a hurdle in our way. But I think that's sort of how I've had to come through it. Now, the other reality then is my son. My eldest son is born out of wedlock. And so literally I put him through the kind of life I had as a child. But it made me more conscious. So now I've had time to sit down with him, to talk to him, to apologize, to sort of maybe try and empathize with his situation. While I don't expect him to understand the reasons why maybe things between me and his mom didn't work out, but I cannot ignore the fact that it did affect his life. So I also take responsibility for those same decisions. And by God's grace, I'm trying to make up for it for as much as I can in his life right now. Yeah.
Right. That's thanks for being so vulnerable, so as to share the details about your growing up, about your relationships, and about your children. So, Ray, how did the way that you grew up and with the sense of rejection or the reality of rejection that you felt affect the way that you then viewed or understood who God is or was to you at the time? Because I imagine if your earthly parents are so removed from you in the way that you've just described, how then can you grasp a concept of a father who is loving and yet you don't experience it with the people that you can see here on earth?
I think the hardest thing to understand, Farai, is unconditional love. Um, you cannot only get unconditional love from your parents. And so for me, that concept, even till today, there are moments I struggle to understand because all my life I felt I needed to earn, I needed to keep performing very well in school, I needed to do well to gain acceptance. When I did something wrong, I felt people are just going to walk away. Okay. And so in my life, it's something that always, it's a very hard concept to grasp. I understand it with my children. And now that I see, I love my children. They can wind me up to no end, but I know I love them. No matter how angry I get, I know I love my children. Okay. And I'll always express my love for my kids, even after I've been angry. But I never got that from my own parents. So I think in terms of affecting how I view God, there's always that. Okay. Again, I always say I'm very mindful that there are people that loved me unconditionally in my life. I had fantastic aunts and uncles that raised me. I have no bad word to say about them. But I guess these are also issues that I couldn't even express to them growing up. These are things that were very, very personal to myself and issues that I had to deal with in my adulthood.
How did that affect building relationships and making friends, school years, and now in your adult life?
I think you are always wary of the people that are around you. I get along with pretty much anyone that can get along with people. I don't struggle, but I struggle to bring people very close to me. So if I consider someone a close friend, it's taken me a while to bring them close because you are afraid people will walk away, and you don't want that rejection because it's something that you've carried as a child. So you take a while. I can smile, I can laugh with you, but to consider you close, I think it's just one of those things that it's affected me. Um, Even in my marriage, took a while to just accept that the fact that my wife just loves me unconditionally. I did not need to do anything more about who I was. There was always a sense of wanting to do something to earn, qualify. There's just always that. But yeah.
That's fantastic, Ray. So tell me a bit about your business, Ray. What do you do? You spoke about training. Are you able to just give us just a bit of flavor as to what it is that you're involved in?
Okay. Now I light up. You come back to business. I like money. So um, I think for me, my business philosophy comes around. My kids ask me, Dad, what do you do? I say I solve problems. Okay, and I get paid to solve problems. Now, to solve problems, I needed skills. So one of my biggest skills is talking. So I took up training. So I train healthcare workers, especially those that work in mental health. I just train them just to support them around being able to understand the conditions that people have in mental health, how to empathize, how to understand what's happening, but also how to keep the people safe and keep themselves safe. So yeah, that's sort of my day-to-day job. However, in terms of business, my interests do vary. I am an IT entrepreneur. Uh, an awkward, I think, an oxymoron, if you're going to put it together with me. I'm not the most IT related person, but I've just begun to understand the value of IT solutions. So I have interests in financial technologies. I've got interest in fintech company. I have interest in also education. So I've got an educational software. And right now I'm just sort of blending in IT into some of my training. I'm beginning to also develop training materials. So I think for me, I love solving problems. I love solving problems.
Ray, you mentioned mental health as your area of focus. What's your take on mental health as it relates to men? Here, I'm focusing particularly on Black men with the kind of background that you and I have had. What has been your views around that area, and how has that changed as you started training and started getting exposure to the subject of mental health, especially as it relates to men?
Okay. I think, you know what, someone defined mental health for me as the best way I know was to say is the health of the brain. Okay. So when we talk about mental health, we're simply saying, how is your gray matter functioning? So when someone is got a mental health issue, it means something is not working well in the brain. So what it does, it maybe demystifies, because I think we tend to spiritualize, we tend to want to put things into a whole dimension of the supernatural, and that easily stigmatizes people. But if you think it is a health issue, I could have a headache, I could have a sore muscles, I could have a tummy ache. So let's put it that way: it's sickness. Okay. Now, coming from a cultural perspective, the way we've always viewed men, a man cannot admit to having mental health issues. Okay. A man cannot admit to having a weakness. I was not raised to cry. So whenever I cried, I never told anyone I cried, because that's not what a man does. Okay. While I understand there is merit in wanting us to maybe develop a spine, develop a backbone around dealing with issues, but I think to an extent it was overplayed. The way it was then sold to us, it made it harder to share a problem, to share a situation, to just seek help. Okay. Then I think the stigma that mental health carries, maybe in the Western community now it's a bit more acceptable, but coming from an African background, there is no way someone is saying I'm having mental health issues and we look at you the same. Um, Either you are demon possessed, you are bewitched, or something, and you don't feel human enough. So I think that was sort of that's my background to mental health. Now, having become a professional within the industry, it's changed because I've begun to see people, some that are fully functional, but they have mental health issues. You know, you begin to understand things like autism. You come through learning disabilities and all these things. And slowly, you are beginning to realize these things are normal for people to have disease. Some of it is treatable. Okay. Somebody, because remember, it's a chemical imbalance in the brain. So there are medications that can be treated, not in every case. But I think accepting that just as a starting point to say mental health, when people have got mental health issues, it's normal. It should be a starting point. And supporting someone that's having mental health issues should not be, it shouldn't be as, it shouldn't be dramatic. It should be normal because they're not feeling well. And so it's, again, I'll also maybe add another caveat in that, in saying, up until it happens to someone that's close to you, it's not a reality. It is not a reality. Again, for me, there's issues that I never thought were real. There's also issues that I thought maybe were for people. You always have this preconceived ideas around certain issues. So up until it happens, up until it comes close to home, you have no idea. You have no idea. Yeah.
When was the last time you cried, Ray?
Last time I cried, I was happy. I was happy. I was very, very happy. I think I cried that day 4 or 5 times because I think my youngest son was playing in the cup final. He scored a goal for them to win. I just found tears rolling down my cheeks. It was also the same day my son was coming to join us from Zimbabwe. Again, a monumental event. So the moment I saw him, just the waterworks. I think I'm always very close to crying, but it doesn't always come off. Maybe.
So did the children see the tears rolling down your cheeks?
Yes, no, everyone, that one I couldn't hide. I could not hide. No,
Wow.
they were tears of joy.
And did they ask why, or there was no need for that? It was rather.
No, there was no need. There was no need. I think they actually started crying because it's something that they'd never seen. Even my wife cried. She'd never seen me cry.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ray, you know that I went through a personal crisis, and I count you as one of the people that supported me directly, and I'll always be super grateful for what you did for me. Tell me what your take was on just getting an exposure to that, because the first time you saw me, obviously to you, I just looked fine. I looked normal. And I guess what then happened for you is you came across someone else who told you a story of what they went through. And immediately I sensed that there was a turnaround. There was a 180-degree change in your attitude. And you phoned me on that day. And it was like an epiphany moment for you. Tell me a bit about that, if you remember.
Yeah, I think, you know what? I remember we went out for dinner the one time when you shared with me what you were going through. Farah, I couldn't get my head around it. Okay, I could not get my head around it. In my mind, there's no reason why you had to be going through that. You are a healthy person, Farah. You had everything going for you. It's not like your life suffered boredom. No. you live a very busy life. You've got a very loving family, very supportive family. In my mind, there was absolutely no reason. And so I was really confused. So I think my first thing was to go spiritual. Okay, naturally you default to, I think, we need to cast out a spirit or two here. It then took by some chance, I think I can only say God. I just reconnected with old friends. One of them, I think, is one of your previous guests, Collins. And while we were in that meeting, 2 people shared that they'd gone through depression, and I'm thinking, this guy was my pastor. Okay, this guy was my pastor, my man of God. The other, and that's when it hit me that, this thing, it's real. It affects people like you and me. I thought I would be immune. I thought people like us are immune to this kind of thing. It doesn't happen to us. You know what I'm saying? I didn't think it was within our culture. I thought maybe, culture, this culture, Western culture that's been using drugs and all these things. Maybe, this whole stigma or presumptions, let me say the presumptions that we carry. But when you spoke to me and when I spoke to the guys, that's when it hit me that, what my brother is going through is real stuff. But my question was, then what can I do? I mean, outside nagging you, um, there was no solution in sight. But it's then listening through and just understanding that, number one, first thing I just needed to do was just be there as a friend and understand that, the decisions that you're making are actually outside your control. You are not making decisions because you don't want to talk to me. But this is actually the symptoms of what it is that you're going through. Accepting, the kind of decisions that you'd made, and just, putting them in that sense of it's normal for this to happen because of what you're going through. I think that was the biggest thing for me. And then just understanding that, all I needed to do was just keep knocking gently. And then also just being able to just say, let me find something that will connect you to yourself, something that will just get you back into that comfort zone, into saying, I want to come out of this. Yes, prayer, we were praying for you. I can never discount the grace of and the power of God. But I think slowly as we started talking, I could sense you also trying to come out. So it then became easier. I think once we started developing a language around it. And the more, especially when we then sat and you were able to then share with me openly what you were going through, I think I felt also for me, that's when you started coming out, because you could now look back and say, my days there. I won't use the term that we use. I think let's keep that one between us. But once we could caricature it, once we could put a term for it, it was then easier to look back at a season and say that season is over. And I think we then just sort of blazed through. Let me not say walk, we blazed through. And I'm happy that we can have this conversation.
That's amazing. So, Ray, what would you say to men who try to just get to grips and just avoid dealing with the issues and just say and knuckle down and try and bury their heads in sand and just try and ignore the issues? Why do you think it's important that people should have someone, at least a person, two people that you can phone and say, hey, there's a crisis here, I need help?
Yeah, I think, once you bottle things up, it's like if you paint a picture and you make a mistake in a corner, you lose focus of the whole picture. All you can see is that little smudge in the corner. And you think anytime anyone sees a picture, all they can see is that smudge. And you lose sight of everything else. Most of the time when you say my life is not going well, it's not the whole life. It's maybe just you focus on just the one thing and that becomes everything. You could be having a bad time in your marriage, but your business is going well. Your business could be struggling and the marriage is going well. The family is okay. You're paying your bills, you're okay. But just because one area, and when you don't talk to someone about it, that area can become all you see. And if that becomes all you see, very easy, you can get yourself into a very bad state of thinking. And which is why many a time we ask ourselves, but this person, what happened to them? They had everything going for them, but we didn't realize that one area of their life that they were holding on to, and that area became the only thing that they could see. So I would always say to any man, you're never alone. You are never alone. At the worst, just go into a pub, sit with a stranger and just talk to them. Talk to someone that doesn't know you, they won't judge you. Just open your mouth, let it out. Because I think men, unlike women, women need to build relationships. And for a man, I could just sit in a pub, have a drink with a guy, and tell him my life story and walk away.
Mm.
So find someone to talk to. Find someone to talk to. I never ever do this. I know maybe if you're a Christian, you have, your pastor, you've got other brothers in church. But if you're not part of a church, if you're not part of such a fellowship, just have friends. If you can't find friends, find a stranger. Find a professional. There's no harm in getting a therapist. It's for your own health. It's for your own good. I think any man, you are better off having the courage to face it, but don't face it alone.
Mm. So, Ray, and what advice would you give to our cultural setup where if someone has got a mental health issue, they tend to be consigned to the edges of society and just labeled as anobenga? How do we deal with those narratives in our society?
I think just starting from an awareness perspective, I think our understanding of mental health issues is informed more by superstition and mysticism and all this supernatural thinking rather than medical facts. So I think let's start by maybe creating platforms where we can talk about mental health as a phenomena, as something that is real. Let's try and take it away from the realms of the super spiritual, but let's accept it as something that will happen to people and that it happens to normal people. Okay. Yes, there's maybe disease that people are born with, but the ones that we're talking about generally are issues that come up in life. These are things that depression is something that will happen to people at different stages of their life. And I think having open conversations that say, look, this is normal, but because it's normal, just like if you've got a headache, you're going to find painkillers.
Yeah.
If you've got an issue, you're going to go to the doctor. Have the courage to also go to a doctor, talk to someone. I think we need to have discussions around it. We need to open up the discussion. I would also particularly say within the church, because I think within the church there's denial, and someone can easily feel like if they say they're depressed, they can be labeled as if they're possessed. And so I wouldn't want to come up and start having demons cast out of me. So I'm bound to close up and suffer in silence. So I think let's open up the space. Let's open up the space. That would be my advice, I think.
Ray, you are always full of wisdom. You are overflowing. Wisdom overflows. It exudes out of you. Can you give me just tips and I guess your personal strategies around how you've acquired the kind of wisdom that you have? I know you're going to make reference to the Bible, which is fair, but I think everyone has got access to the Bible. But somehow you have managed to tap into an understanding of issues that do not relate to your training, but you just have got a very logical brain towards problem solving. Do you think that also keeps you sane and you are able to rationalize things and compartmentalize things in such a way that they don't affect you at a personal level?
All right. I think one of the hardest things in my life is trying to maintain a balance. Because I think there's two extremes. There's people that take the spiritual stuff, the Bible, and they go one extreme. They see a demon under every rock. Then you've got others that then totally deny everything. Now, I think the truth lies somewhere in between. And so I think for me, the greatest struggle is to look at things and say, before I go one way or the other, what do I understand? What can I garner? What can I put together as a truth? I also allow myself to listen to arguments. I think this is one thing that maybe I would always challenge people to do. I don't discount an argument because I don't agree with it. I want to hear the guy that says the Bible is not real because there's something that he understands. Now, I might not agree with him, but there most probably some truth that lurks within his argument. I've listened to people that say there is no spiritual things, and they are not totally wrong, but they're not right either. But equally, so I think I'm always trying to sort of stay somewhere in the middle when it comes to a lot of issues, which maybe allows to try and get balance on different issues. Where I think we struggle is we tend to then conclude and hold on to one belief system, and then you discount everything else. I think the maxim is don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. I think that's sort of how I always land on issues. Yeah.
Very interesting, Ray. And you clearly have passed the gene of acting and emceeing to your children. Was that intentional? Was that deliberate, or they just it's a case of the apple not falling too far from the tree?
Well, I think it's maybe let me say I'm living vicariously through my children. Let me put it that way. I would have loved to be an actor. I would have loved to do stuff, TV production, use that's the creative side of me. But I think the economy that we grew up in, the circumstances we grew up in, those options were not easy for us. I don't see a conversation going down very well with either of my parents where I say, I want to go and be an actor and I live long enough to see the end of that day. Most of us, you would have been smacked into the next, into yesterday if you ever raised that kind of thing. So when my children started showing, the signs of wanting to act, and I said, you know what, I'm going to allow them. So yeah, we go out there, we support them. You do pay for lessons. It's not easy. The number of auditions that they go to and they don't get the part, and you are there to pick them up. But we are grateful. I mean, they've had decent parts in quite a few productions, and we get to celebrate. I mean, people come, they say, "Well done." I can also just say thank God for the opportunities that they get. Yeah, but no, we're grateful for that.
That's great. Ray, are you happy? And what's your understanding of that?
Do I have everything that I want in my life? No. I think let me take that away. So I cannot let my happiness be determined by what I possess, because I don't think I'll ever have everything. But I think I'm happy because I can celebrate what I have. I mean, my family, the fact that I'm able to look after my family the way I am able to. And I think that's what I can say. If I talk about happiness, or if I talk about joy, I think I cannot talk about. I don't want to describe a happiness that has no bad bits to it. I think then that's not a real life. There are issues I obviously struggle with here and there, but I think on a general, I'm as happy as Larry.
So as you live after your life, Ray, do you look ahead with trepidation? Do you wake up excited about the day ahead? What's your setting on a day-to-day basis?
I don't worry about Jesus returning soon. If he's coming, Jesus is coming. So that I can't change. I'm not worried about 666, end of the world, new world order. That's going to happen. That's going to happen. Okay. That's got nothing to do with me. I can't change that. So I take my head away from those kind of thinking. All I can say is, you know what? I live to certain goals. I live to build certain things in my life. And that's what drives me on a day-to-day basis. It's waking up, knowing I've got meetings, I've got business projects that need to be pushed. I've got kids to raise. I've got a wife to support. I think it's these things that I do on a day-to-day basis that keep me going. I try not to think Armageddon. I know there's wars. I know there's people dying in wars in Gaza, in all these places. But I also choose not to make this part of my daily bread because these are issues that I personally cannot affect. So let me focus on the things that I can.
Right. It's been amazing hanging out with you. Do you have any parting words to people who may be struggling right now, whatever the issue may be? What would you advise them to do right now?
I think the hardest words to hear are tomorrow will be a better day. Because when you're standing in today, it doesn't look like it. There's a song, I think, by Kirk Franklin that used to encourage me that joy comes in the morning. Okay. But the night always feels very, very long. And I can't discount what someone is going through. I cannot trivialize what they're going through. But what I want anyone listening to know is joy comes in the morning. Right now, whatever you're going through, it soon shall pass. You might not know how, because the solution is yet to present itself, but just hang in there, get help, talk to someone, just hold out. If you're a man of faith, trust God. Trust God.
Dear listeners and viewers, brings us to the end of yet another enlightening episode here at Break the Cycle. Today, a huge thank you to our incredible guest, Ray Kumalo, for joining us today and sharing his inspiring journey and invaluable insights on breaking free from the cycles that limit us. Remember, breaking the cycle is about taking the first step, no matter how small. If today's discussion resonated with you, consider sharing with someone who might benefit from it too. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on a favorite platform so you don't miss any episodes that we push out. Together we can break the cycle and embrace a future of endless possibilities. My name is Farai Obwana. This has been Break the Cycle. Today.